My wife left me because her mother said I would never be enough. She told Marina that I was a failure, a man unworthy of her daughter, and Marina believed her. It's strange how quickly love can dissolve once doubt starts whispering. It doesn't scream. It doesn't fight. It just quietly replaces warmth with distance until you wake up one day and realize the person beside you is already gone. In the divorce, they took everything. The $3.8 million mansion I built with my bare hands, the cars, the savings, the life I thought we were building together, all gone. It felt as if the world had ripped out the very foundation beneath me, and I was left standing in the rubble of my own devotion. 6 months later, when I was barely holding myself together in a run-down apartment that smelled of paint thinner and regret, there was a knock at my door. A lawyer stood there, tall and composed, holding a black briefcase. His shoes gleamed against the cracked linoleum. He looked me in the eye and said, "Your ex-wife's father wants to meet you. He has something that belongs to you." I didn't understand it then, but that knock changed everything. I never imagined my life would collapse the way it did. For years, I believed I was building something real, not just walls and beams, but a future. I wasn't born with wealth or a family name that opened doors. I was a builder, a man who worked with his hands, managed crews, and made sure every house I built could stand tall against storms. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and I was proud of it. When I met Marina, I thought I'd found someone who saw the man beneath the dust and sweat. She had grace and confidence, a quiet beauty that could silence a room. I loved her instantly, not because she was perfect, but because I thought she saw me. I believe she saw the way I dreamed, the way I built not just for money, but for meaning. But her mother, Dahlia Crestwood, made it clear from the start that I was not welcome in their world. Dahlia lived by one rule: status defines worth. And in her eyes, I was a man in muddy boots trying to climb a marble staircase I had no right to touch. I'll never forget that Thanksgiving dinner. I was telling a story about a young couple whose first home I'd built. Their joy had reminded me why I loved what I did. I was halfway through when Dahlia interrupted me with a laugh so sharp it sliced through the room. "Marina," she said, not even looking at me, "a man who spends his life hammering nails will never give you the life you deserve." Everyone laughed politely. I smiled to hide the sting, but inside, something cracked. I told myself to shrug it off. That love was stronger than pride. That Marina would see through the poison. For a while, she did. She told me her mother didn't understand us. She said love was enough. And for a while, I believed her. When my business began to grow, I poured every ounce of myself into our home, a mansion overlooking the ocean, every inch crafted by my hands. It wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that I could build something magnificent, that I could give her the life she wanted. But love cannot breathe in the shadow of comparison. Poison doesn't need a shout. It just needs time to spread. Over the years, Dahlia's voice became Marina's. The woman who once said she loved me for my ambition began to resent it. "You work too much. Why don't we have more? You'll never be like the men Mother knows." The words started as complaints, then became truths she repeated until she believed them. My mother, Irene, saw what was happening. "Ethan," she told me softly, "don't let that woman make you forget your worth." My younger brother, Caleb, wasn't as gentle. He would point at me with that fiery glare of his and say, "She's not fighting for you, brother. That's not a wife. That's a shadow." But I loved her. I kept believing that if I just worked harder, built more, achieved more, maybe she would remember the man she fell in love with. Then one morning, in the kitchen of the house I built, Marina ended it. Her voice was calm, rehearsed, almost merciful in its coldness. "Mother was right, Ethan. You'll never be more than a failed dreamer." The sound of her words was quieter than I expected, but the silence that followed was louder than any scream. I wanted to fight, to beg her to remember who we were, but her eyes were hollow. She had already left long before that morning. The divorce was brutal. Dahlia sat in the courtroom like a queen, unmoved as I was stripped of everything I had built. They took the mansion, the cars, the savings, every brick of my sacrifice. I left with nothing but debts and the echo of a life that no longer existed. Outside the courthouse, I watched them drive away in the car I once washed every Sunday morning. Dahlia met my eyes through the tinted window and smiled. Not kindly, but with triumph. She didn't have to say it. I could hear her voice in my head. You were never enough. The months that followed blurred together. My new apartment was small, cracked walls, leaky pipes, a refrigerator that moaned through the night like it pitied me. I took whatever jobs I could, fixing fences, patching roofs, sanding floors. Every dollar vanished as fast as it came. Every night, I sat in the dim glow of a single bulb, drowning in the quiet. Sometimes I catch myself staring at my hands. Hands that once built mansions, now blistered from day labor. I'd hear Dahlia's words again. You'll never amount to anything. My mother visited often, always bringing food I couldn't afford and hope I didn't deserve. A man's worth isn't measured by his bank account, she'd whisper, hugging me as if she could hold my broken pieces together. Caleb would stop by too, rough and honest as always. You're letting them win, Ethan, he'd growl, setting a beer on the table. Get up, fight. But I didn't know how to fight anymore. My fire was gone. My dreams were ashes. Then one afternoon, 6 months after losing everything, came that knock. The man at the door introduced himself as Simon Dillard, attorney for Harold Crestwood, Marina's father. I had always assumed Harold hated me as much as his wife did. He wishes to meet with you, Simon said. He believes he has something that belongs to you. I nearly laughed in his face. What could Harold possibly want to give me? Another wound? Another reminder of my failure? But something in Simon's tone made me pause. Maybe it was the respect in his eyes. Maybe it was curiosity. I agreed. We drove across town to a quiet neighborhood lined with oak trees whose leaves had begun to turn gold. The car rolled to a stop in front of a stately brick house, dignified but not ostentatious. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and tobacco, the kind of scent that carried decades of memory. Harold sat behind a mahogany desk, older and thinner than I remembered. A cane leaned against his chair. His once sharp eyes looked tired but steady. Ethan, he said softly, thank you for coming. He gestured for me to sit. Simon placed the black briefcase on the desk between us. I know what my wife has done, Harold began, voice heavy with regret. I know what my daughter has done, and I know what you have lost. You may think I stood by silently, but that ends today. He opened the briefcase. The metallic click of the latches echoed in the quiet room like a gavel. Inside were documents, property deeds, business shares, transfer papers, all bearing my name. I stared at them, confused. What is this? Harold leaned back, his gaze unwavering. This is what you earned. You built those developments with your hands and your integrity. You were never paid your worth. I'm correcting that. I was speechless. Why now? I asked. You could have given this to Marina, to Dahlia. Why me? His expression hardened. Because you respected me, he said. Because you worked with honor. Dahlia and Marina only ever saw wealth. You saw value. And I will not let my legacy rot in the hands of greed. He paused, his voice softening. This isn't a gift, Ethan. It's justice. For months, I believed every cruel word said about me. That I was a failure. That I was small. But here was the man I thought had judged me most, handing me back the truth I'd forgotten about myself. Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. Harold's lips curled into the faintest smile. Say it, he murmured. Say you'll rise again. I swallowed hard and nodded. I will. When I left that house, the briefcase felt heavier than gold. Back in my apartment, I spread the documents across the worn table and stared at them for hours. They weren't just papers. They were proof that I wasn't who Dahlia said I was. Proof that my work had value. Proof that I mattered. That night, I called Caleb. Brother, I said quietly, I think I just got my life back. He came over, looked at the documents, and let out a whistle. I told you, he said, grinning, you were never finished. He was right. With Harold's support, I reopened my construction business. I started small, one project, then another, but this time I built differently. I built with wisdom, with purpose. Every wall I raised felt like redemption. Every foundation I poured felt like reclaiming my soul. Within a year, the company was thriving again. Clients returned, new contracts rolled in, And for the first time in a long while, I slept without the weight of failure pressing against my chest. When I finally moved out of that rundown apartment, I bought a modest home by the coast. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. The first morning there, I stood by the window with a cup of coffee and watched the sun bleed gold across the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time in years, I didn't see loss. I saw possibility. My mother visited often. She'd look around, tears in her eyes, and whisper, "I knew you'd rise again." Caleb would laugh, slap my back, and remind me to keep going. And I did. As for Marina and Dahlia, I never sought revenge. I could have. The thought crossed my mind more than once. But revenge is a cage disguised as victory. I had no interest in living behind bars again. Word reached me eventually that the mansion I built for them had become a burden, too expensive to maintain, too hollow to call home. Their perfect world crumbled quietly, the same way mine once had. But I didn't gloat. Their downfall wasn't my triumph. My triumph was in standing again, stronger, freer, untouched by their poison. Sometimes when I drive past the old neighborhoods, I still see remnants of my past. Houses I built with calloused hands and hope-filled eyes. I see the man I was then, and I smile. Because that man never truly died. He just needed time to remember his own worth. I learned something through all of it. A man's value isn't measured by what others say or by what he owns. It's measured by the strength it takes to rebuild when the world has torn him apart. It's in how he keeps showing up when no one believes in him anymore. Dahlia called me a failure. Marina called me a dreamer. But I proved that both can coexist because it was my dream that rebuilt my life, and it was my failure that taught me how to value it. Now, years later, I still hear Harold's voice in my mind. This isn't a gift, Ethan. It's justice. And I understand what he meant. Life doesn't always give us fairness, but it gives us moments, small, unexpected chances to reclaim who we are. I'm Ethan Rohr. Once, I was a man broken by loss, humiliated by love, turned cruel, and haunted by words that told me I'd never be enough. But today, I stand as proof that no one defines your worth but you. So, to anyone who's been told they're not enough, remember this. The opinions of others are temporary. Integrity endures. Pain fades, but the lessons stay. Use them. Let every insult become a hammer in your hand. Every loss a foundation beneath your feet. Because no one can destroy a man who refuses to stay down. If my story finds you in your lowest moment, take this as your sign. Rise. Rise again, no matter how deep the fall. The world may try to break you, but the rebuild will make you unstoppable. And as Harold once told me, in a voice that still echoes through time, rise. Always rise. You just heard a story of betrayal, survival, and quiet revenge. If it left you thinking, hit like, share it forward, and subscribe for more true emotional stories that'll stay with you long after they end. Every click helps another story find its voice.